Have you ever, like, tried to set a firm, incredibly clear boundary with your family, only to have a parent completely ignore it?
Yeah.
Like, entirely out of what they call love.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a very familiar scenario.
Right. You draw this definitive line in the sand, you sit them down, you explain the exact logic of why you need that space to exist, and then you just watch as they enthusiastically bulldoze right over it because they just couldn't help themselves.
It's an incredibly common dynamic. I mean, we're really talking about the classic collision between a young adult who's, actively trying to establish their own sovereignty and a parent whose protective, deeply ingrained instincts simply haven't caught up.
Yeah, caught up to the reality that their child is fully grown.
Exactly. The mind knows a kid is an adult, but the nervous system, it still just really wants to hover.
Well, today, we are going to look at this exact dynamic through a surprisingly high-profile lens. Our source material for this deep dive is a brief transcript from E! News.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it details a recent family night out on April 9th for daytime talk show hosts Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. They were stepping out to support their 23-year-old son, Joaquin.
And, on the surface, that reads like a completely standard celebrity update. Like, a famous family attends an event, they smile for the cameras, and they go home.
Right. But our mission today is to look completely past the glitz of that headline. We want to extract the highly relatable, universal family dynamics at play here.
I love that, because it really does happen to everyone.
It really does. We want to figure out what happens when a child grows up, establishes intense professional boundaries, and essentially forces their parents to transition from being the primary caretakers, the stars of the show, really to being mere spectators in the back row. Okay, let's unpack this.
To understand why this specific outing on April 9th carries so much psychological weight, we have to look backward. We actually need to look at what has not been happening over the last decade.
Which is wild when you consider how intensely public this specific family is.
Yeah, it really is.
According to the source, this was their first major public outing together in 10 years. The last time they did this kind of official photographed family appearance was way back in 2015.
And the context of that 2015 event, it really provides the baseline for everything we're talking about today, because it was the unveiling of Kelly's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Let's picture that for a second. 10 years ago, Joaquin was, roughly 13 years old?
Right like that, yeah.
So he's there strictly in a supporting role as a literal child. He's standing on the sidelines, surrounded by photographers, just watching his mother's name get permanently cemented into the pavement of Hollywood.
A massive moment for the parents.
Right. But fast forward to today, and the environment is entirely flipped. Joaquin is 23. He has completed high school. He's completed college. The source specifically notes he graduated just last year from the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance.
And what's fascinating here is how perfectly that 10-year gap mirrors the most critical psychological transition in human development.
You mean the shift to adulthood?
Exactly. Going from 13 to 23, that's the exact window where we shift from dependent child to independent adult. And, the University of Michigan program is notoriously rigorous.
It's no joke.
No, it's not. This isn't someone just casually testing the waters of his parents' industry. This is someone who has spent years really honing a craft entirely away from the cameras.
Right. And he's already kicked off his career with a role in Hulu's Foster Date pilot. And the specific reason for this April 9th outing is a massive milestone. He is making his Broadway debut in the revival of Death of a Salesman.
Oh, wow. That is huge.
So the analogy I keep returning to is about driving. Back in 2015, at the Walk of Fame, Joaquin was just a passenger in his parents' vehicle of success.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, they were driving, they were navigating the route, and he was just buckled into the back seat for the ride. Now, a decade later, he is the one behind the wheel. He's navigating his own career, and his parents have been relegated to the back seat. They are the supporting cast now.
And stepping into that driver's seat, it requires a psychological process called individuation.
Individuation?
Right. In 2015, his public identity was simply Kelly and Mark's son. He was a living extension of their legacy. But by standing on a Broadway stage, engaging in this highly demanding artistic endeavor, the focus radically shifts.
He's as a person.
Yes, he's actively undergoing the process of separating his identity from the people who raised him, and doing it on a very public stage. He has to prove, both to himself and to the industry, that his successes and his failures frankly belongs solely to him.
And because Joaquin recognizes that his parents' immense public footprint could easily overshadow his debut, his immediate professional reflex is containment. He realizes he has to construct a wall.
He has to protect his space.
Exactly. With him now firmly in the professional driver's seat, he begins to do what all young adults absolutely must do. He starts setting boundaries. According to the source, when it came to death of a salesman, Joaquin explicitly banned his parents from catching the preview performances.
A very specific boundary.
Very. He gave them strict instructions to wait until the official opening night to see the play.
For anyone not deeply embedded in the theater world, a preview is a very specific operational phase.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure, so it happens weeks before opening night. There is a paying audience, but the show is not technically locked or frozen yet. The director might still be completely rewriting scenes during the day. The actors might be adjusting their comedic timing. The lighting cues are shifting around.
So it's still a work in progress.
Very much so. They are figuring out how a live audience reacts to the material in real time. It is a highly fluid, structurally vulnerable state for a production.
Okay, so the standard Hollywood narrative is always to chalk this up to opening night jitters. The idea being that you simply don't want your family there when you're nervous. But I struggle to accept that simple explanation here.
Why is that?
Well, I look at this family and I have to ask, is this just standard actor anxiety? Or is there a massive added layer of intense pressure when your parents are massive daytime television stars? I mean, Kelly and Mark literally talk about their daily lives, their family, and their observations for a living to millions of people every single morning.
This raises an important question about the nature of observation and really the mechanics of vulnerability. Challenging the normal anxiety narrative is definitely the right move here.
Because the stakes are different.
Right. When your parents possess a megaphone that reaches millions of living rooms, any casual observation they make has the potential to become instant public consumption. A Broadway show during previews is essentially a multi-million-dollar startup in its beta testing phase.
Think about it like you are drafting a highly sensitive, critical email at work.
Oh, I hate that.
Right. You are moving paragraphs around, fixing typos, trying to find the exact right tone. You desperately need that messy drafting phase. You absolutely do not want your boss, or in this case, your incredibly famous parents, standing over your shoulder reading the screen while you're still typing.
That is a perfect parallel. The concept of a preview at its core is a safe space to fail. It's a laboratory where the actor is allowed to experiment and get things wrong before they are expected to get them perfectly right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like asking someone not to walk through the house while the drywall mud is still wet. Joaquin needs time for his artistic choices to harden before anyone tests their strength. By setting this boundary, he's establishing a remarkably mature professional barrier.
He is protecting his drafting phase. But even beyond the fear of his mom turning a flub line into a cute anecdote on national television, there has to be something deeper going on internally for him as an actor.
Well, absolutely. There's a profound neurological shift that happens when a parent enters the room.
Really? Neurological?
Yes. Acting requires complete psychological immersion. You have to convince your own brain that you are Willy Loman's son. But the moment you look out into the fourth row and see the people who taught you how to tie your shoes, it triggers deeply ingrained childhood neural pathways. The familial gaze is never, ever neutral.
Wow. So it instantly breaks the psychological fourth wall. His brain would just snap from, I am this character, right back to, I am Kelly and Mark's son.
Exactly. It carries the weight of a lifetime of dynamics. When a parent watches you work, they aren't just seeing the professional in front of them. They are seeing the toddler, the teenager, the entire history of your existence. Joaquin is actively separating the personal from the professional to maintain his flow state. He's asserting control over his own narrative by demanding that they wait until the product is finished.
So he draws that definitive line. He tells them, do not come to the previews. Wait for opening night. Which brings us to the core tension of the source material.
The reactions.
Yes. How do parents react when their adult child sets a firm, mature boundary like that? In the case of this family, the sources reveal two incredibly different, yet highly revealing approaches to being told no by your kid.
Very different approaches.
Let's start with Kelly. Her reaction was actually discussed on a March episode of Live with Kelly and Mark. She talked about how she handled Joaquin's instructions, and she stated on the show, I respected his wishes. I was like, well, since I can't go to the first preview, I'm going to get out of town.
It is a fascinating case study in parental self-regulation. By physically leaving the city, she is acknowledging her own limitations and successfully managing her impulses.
Wait, I have to stop you and push back on that a bit. Is that actually self-regulation, though?
How do you mean?
Think about it. If I have to physically flee the state because I don't trust my own impulse to respect my son's boundary, that almost sounds like a massive lack of self-control. It highlights how intensely enmeshed this dynamic actually is.
Yeah.
She essentially had to put herself in timeout in another zip code just so she wouldn't crash his play.
That is a very fair critique. It borders on a white-knuckle approach to parenting. If we define self-regulation as the ability to sit quietly with discomfort, then physically escaping the trigger is perhaps a workaround rather than true regulation.
Right, it's like hiding the junk food so you don't eat it.
Exactly. But if we look at the outcome, it remains an act of deep respect, masking an incredibly difficult process of letting go. She knew that if she was in New York, the gravitational pull to go see her son perform his first Broadway show would be too agonizing to resist. She created geographical distance to enforce the emotional distance her son requested.
I suppose recognizing you don't have the willpower to stay away, and therefore leaving town, is a bizarre kind of love in itself.
It is.
The discipline to remove yourself when every biological instinct in you wants to be in that front row.
And that biological instinct leads us perfectly to Mark. Mark took a completely different path. He did not follow his son's instructions. The source tells us he ended up defying the boundary entirely and sneaking into the show with a last-minute ticket.
Unbelievable.
And his quote about it is incredibly revealing. He said, "I was watching him with a smile on my face and I cried."
Here's where it gets really interesting. You have these two diametrically opposed reactions to the exact same boundary. And I want you, the listener, to pause and really consider this. Which parent do you relate to more? Are you the parent who literally have to flee the city to avoid the temptation of interfering? Or are you the one who sneaks into the back row, breaking the rules, just so you don't miss a single second of the milestone?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really looking at are two sides of the exact same coin.
How so?
Well, both of these reactions, though they look completely different in execution, stem from the exact same emotional source, an overwhelming, almost paralyzing sense of parental pride, anxiety, and grief.
Grief is a really interesting word choice there. You don't usually associate sneaking into a Broadway debut with grief.
But it is. Mark's reaction illustrates the primal, almost uncontrollable urge parents have to bear witness to their children's lives. But the tears aren't just about pride in the performance. They are about the realization that an era has ended.
Wow, yeah.
He needed to witness the transition from the little boy holding his mother's hand at the Walk of Fame to the man commanding a stage completely on his own. The grief comes from knowing that as a parent, your role as the center of their universe is definitively over.
You can almost feel the visceral tension in Mark's decision. It's the internal monologue of, I know I am not supposed to be here, I know he explicitly told me not to come, but the biological imperative to watch my offspring succeed is completely overriding my logical brain.
It is the tension between respecting the autonomous adult your child has become and the enduring instinct to oversee their life. Mark's presence in that dark theater wasn't about critiquing the acting or checking up on him. It was about his own need for emotional release. He needed to see the culmination of 23 years of parenting.
It is genuinely funny to think about the logistics of it. You have one parent who is buying a plane ticket to escape the temptation, and the other who is hovering over a ticketing website buying a last-minute seat to indulge it.
It's quite the contrast.
And yet, the messy reality of family dynamics is that Joaquin probably needed both of those things to happen. He needed the literal geographical space that Kelly provided to feel respected as a professional. But deep down, there is probably a profound comfort in knowing your dad is so incredibly proud of you that he just couldn't stay away.
It paints a wonderfully complete picture of how imperfect these transitions always are. Boundaries in families are rarely clean, sharp lines. They're usually jagged borders that get aggressively tested, occasionally respected, and very often quietly crossed under the cover of darkness.
So what does this all mean? When we strip away the E! News headline, the Broadway lights, and the daytime television anecdotes, we are left with a surprisingly grounded, human story.
We really are.
Whether you are a famous Hollywood family navigating intense public scrutiny, or just everyday people trying to figure out how to exist with each other over a holiday dinner, the transition into adulthood is universal. It requires young adults to bravely draw lines in the sand, to define exactly where their parents end and where they begin. And it requires parents to learn the incredibly difficult art of standing behind those lines even if they have to leave the state to do it, or if they occasionally sneak across just to shed a pride tear in the back row.
It is the perpetual clumsy dance of autonomy and attachment. But as we consider this dynamic of performing, of seeking space to establish oneself away from the familial gaze, it leaves me with one final, perhaps unsettling thought for you to consider.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if we spend the entirety of our youth looking out into the audience, whether that's at a school play, a soccer game, or just seeking approval in our living rooms, consciously or unconsciously, scanning the crowd for our parents' faces to validate us, wait, no. What happens to our internal sense of achievement when we finally force them to look away? When we realize we are out there under the lights, performing entirely for ourselves, does the applause suddenly mean more, or does it just feel entirely fundamentally different?